Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the WordPress Accessibility Day 2020. My name is Roberto Remedios, and I live in San Jose, Costa Rica. I'm a web developer and also user experience and user interface designer. I'm an accessibility advocate and the WordPress Accessibility Day 2020. And I'm also a meter of organizer of accessibility here in Costa Rica. Our next speaker will be Rian Rietveld, and she will be talking about how to use the ARIA standard in forms. Rian is a web accessibility specialist in a full-service WordPress agency level and a trainee at the Ali Collective. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. Okay, I have a pre-recorded talk. I will explain why, and I will share my screen now. Okay, here we go.
Sorry, the video is mute. Sorry, Rian, can you check the volume of the video? I think you need to mute yourself.
What do you want me to do?
Try to play the video now.
24 hours event of WordPress and accessibility. This talk is pre-recorded because it contains demos. Well, because we developers learn by looking at example code and not by reading the specs. I know, so demos it is. First, a bit about myself. My name is Rian Rietveld. I'm a web accessibility expert for Level. That's a full-service WordPress agency in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And I'm also a trainer for the Collective. That's a platform of online accessibility courses. What is ARIA? The abbreviation means Accessible Rich Internet Applications. You can forget that right away, but what you need to know is ARIA are attributes. HTML5 attributes that give extra information and feedback to assistive technology, like, for example, screen readers. In forms, you can use it for naming form controls, describing extra information, and for giving feedback on dynamic changes. I will give you examples of that in the demos later. Before you start, you need to know the first rule of ARIA is don't use ARIA. There are 5 rules. Go and look them up when you have time, but the first rule is the most important. Don't use ARIA to fix meaningless and incorrect HTML5. Use the already available elements, because then the browser and the screen reader knows how to operate and understand them. Aria is about feedback, not about fixing. If you want to join me or look up the code later, the example code is on lvl.li/aria-in-forms. These examples contain very simplified forms. And before you start nagging, no data is submitted, no security checks, no translation, I just want to show you what happens in the front end, so you get the aria. I will do the demos in Safari, as that browser works best together with the VoiceOver screen reader. First, I'll talk you through how to properly name form controls. And we're going to look at the accessibility tree to show how that works. And then we're going to look at 2 different forms and add descriptions and feedback. For all the people expecting me to show how to build new web components from scratch with Aria, I'll share at the end of this talk my opinion about going fancy in forms, naming and describing form controls. Let's do that. Okay. Before you use Aria, you have to have the basics in order. The basic HTML5 must be correct. And then it's super important that you give your form control a name, an accessible name. Okay, I will show you how that works for a screen reader. Here we have a label, your question, and a text area. If you can see, the label is put above the form control. Perfectly understandable. But the label is not connected to the form control. So a screen reader doesn't know what to announce here. You have to connect the label to the form control, and you can do that with a label for is pointing to the ID of the form control. Here the text area has an ID of ID-text area. So the label has a for is ID text area. Now they are connected. I will start the screen reader and let you hear how important that is. Okay, let's start VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on Safari. Naming and describing form controls window, toolbar.
Okay. When a screen reader enters a form, they jump into form mode. That gives the user the opportunity to type instead of operating the screen reader. And then you can jump with the tab key from focusable element to focusable element. So I'll tab now in the first form control.
Leaving toolbar, entering naming and describing form controls web content, edit text, blank, main.
About the form field text area, it announces edit text blank. So it is an edit text field. Blank is I have no name. If I tap to the next one that has a for and ID connection,
your question, edit text.
Then it says your question, edit text. And then the screen reader user knows what to fill out. So without a connection,
edit text, blank.
With a connection,
your question, edit text.
Okay. That must be in order. You have to have a name for the form control. You can use a placeholder then. Is a placeholder a replacement for a label? And no, it isn't. But screen readers get smarter and smarter. In this case, I have a text area with a placeholder, your question. Let's listen how that sounds.
Your question, edit text, blank. Your question.
So the screen reader announces your question, the placeholder. and then tries to figure out what's the name, cannot come up with a name, so it guesses, okay, the placeholder must be the name. Not all screen readers do this, so don't depend on this always working. There's also another issue with this. The placeholder text disappears when you start typing or when the field is filled out with an autocomplete. People may forget what to fill out or need to check if the right value is added to the right fields with an autocomplete. Always add a visual label to prevent errors. So the next thing you can do with aria is give a form control a name with an aria label. In this case, text area, aria label your question. If I tap into this,
Your question, edit text.
it's announced perfectly well, but there's no visual label. You can have a placeholder and an aria label.
Your question, edit text. Describe your question.
The placeholder is announced in a different voice, describe your question, and the aria label is your question. But still you have no visual label. You can use an aria-labelledby. Instead of the element label, you can use, for example, a div. Yay, a div! But you have to connect both together, and that you do with aria-labelledby. You give the div an ID, and in the form control, text area, you say labeled by referring to that ID. How is that announced?
Your question, edit text.
Perfectly okay. I have no idea why you should use a div instead of a label, but maybe you have some obscure use case for this. Next one, aria-describedby, and this is super useful. As I told you, you jump into form mode. And then you only get announced what is connected to the form control. So in this case, if you have your new password and you have an input for your password, and below that the rules, please use a password of minimal 8 characters. That also must be connected to the input field. Otherwise, the screen reader doesn't announce it because the screen reader doesn't know it's connected. And that you do with aria-describedby. The paragraph with the extra information, you give that an ID. And in the input field, the form control, you say aria-describedby referring to that ID.
Your new password, secure edit text with autofill menu. Please use a password of minimum 8 characters.
You notice there's a time lag between announcing the label and announcing the aria-describedby information. That's a Safari issue. I think we'll solve it soon. But now you first hear the label and then you hear the aria-describedby. So you get all the information you need with a form control. Next topic, icons. How do you announce an icon? Because the screen reader cannot know what's in an icon. Well, in this form you have a label with a search, an input field and a button. And the button has a class that this font awesome class that displays an icon of a search, a loop. If you can see, this is perfectly okay. But how does this announce?
Search edit text.
If I give the button focus, I hear nothing. So I have to give the button a name. And that you can do with aria-label. Aria-label, submit search. You put that on the button. all the content inside the button is omitted, only the aria label is announced. Now let's see what it does.
Search edit text.
I still hear nothing. That's weird. I put an aria label on it. I will mute the screen reader now. And now I'm going to inspect the code. And then I see button, class, font awesome, aria-label submit search, and then font awesome added aria-hidden is true to it. That's because font awesome thinks, okay, if it's an icon, better hide it from screen reader because they cannot pronounce it. But if you put a font awesome icon directly on a focusable element, and an element that really makes sense, and you put an aria-hidden true on that, the screen reader doesn't know what it is. It omits it. Think, okay, it doesn't exist. What's the workaround for that? You move the class of the font awesome class out of the button. Actually, you move it inside the button in a span, and you give the class to a span. So the button has the aria label only, and the span with the font awesome class with the loop icon is inside, and it's in the span. That way, the label, aria label is announced. Now, let's see what. I'll close this. So let's move from the start.
Search edit text.
You're nothing. The other
Search edit text.
Move the screen up a bit. You hear nothing. And then with the span inside the button.
Search edit text. Submit search button.
Then the button is announced. Okay, keep this in mind. Not this aria-hidden is true is generated by font awesome, so don't put it on an element that needs to be announced, that needs to have a label, because it will be hidden. You can actually check what the accessible name is for a form control by checking the accessibility tree. Each browser generates an accessibility tree, and screen readers or assistive technology actually read that accessibility tree to know what to announce and how to operate a form control. I will show you in Chrome and in Firefox. This is the one in Chrome. I will inspect. And here I chose the text area without a connected label. And with the exact, I can check the tab accessibility. And here's the accessibility tree. And then you can check out the name. So when there's no connection between the text area and the label, it has no name. And it cannot find any name in, for example, the title, the placeholder, the aria-label name. So this form control has no accessible name. If we check the next one with the for ID construction, it has name, your question. And the name comes from the label, and the label is your question. Next one, placeholder. Name is your question, and it gets it from the placeholder. This is a screen reader workaround. Aria-label. Name is your question, and it gets it from the aria-label. So this is a super easy way to actually see where the name comes from and if it's actually specified. This is a placeholder and an aria label. The name, your question, it gets a name from the aria label, because that's overriding the placeholder. How does this work in Firefox? Actually the same. Firefox adds an inspector tab, accessibility properties. And with Firefox, you also get error warnings. Form elements must be labeled. Here you get a label because it has no name. Inspect properties for the next one. Name is your question. If you have a for ID. So inspect that and look if you have problems. Look what the accessible name is. If you're not sure, did I label this well? As you noticed, naming form controls is essential for understanding how to fill out a form when you depend on your ears and your fingers. Check this in your work or the plugin you use. Well, let's do some live coding and screen reader testing. The reason I pre-recorded this talk. This is a simple subscribe form to our newsletter form. With an indication, please fill out all the fields and agree to the privacy policy. Then name input field with the extra description. Give your first and last name, then an email, and then a checkbox, I agree with the privacy policy, and below that a link to the privacy policies and a subscribe button. Let me go through this with a screen reader. Let's start up VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on Safari. Let's build a form window, toolbar.
And now I tap through the form.
Name required, edit text, main. Email required, edit text. I agree with the privacy policy. Required unticked, tick box. Visited link, read our privacy policy. Subscribe button.
And now I submit the form. And you hear nothing. If you can see, you see a big announcement there, errors in your form. And below that, there are links to the input fields with the error, with the description of what the error is. If I tap further,
visited link, back to index, content information.
Then I go to, then the focus is on the next link. So for a screen reader user, it's so hard to understand what's happening. I hear nothing. This is with an Ajax submit. So it's the subscribe submits on an on-click event. So let's fix this. I use as my code editor PHP Storm. And let's look at the form. Above the form, so it will be announced, there's the title, subscribe to our newsletter, and the information on what to fill out in the form. And there's a placeholder for the notifications. How do you set it up? It's up to you and your framework and your way of working. This is just a demo. Just right. So we need to announce the descriptions with the input field. So we have to give the descriptions an ID. Name, because the ID needs to be unique for the page. And then we connect it to the input field with the aria-describedby. PHP Storm knows aria. Description. Name. Description, give your first and last name, will now be announced together with the input. But I also see a placeholder for the error messages. It will be very useful if the error messages are also announced together with the input field. So I can use in the area as described by more than one ID. And you can put the error first and then the description after that. I do the same with the email. There is no description, so I only have to have an error described by to the error message. That is email error. Right. The checkbox for the terms has a description and an error message, so they need both. Input field. This is the terms error. I have to give the description terms, and I have to give the terms an ID. Right. Okay. If this is okay, everything will be announced together now. Let's see how that works.
Voice over on Safari. Let's build a form window. Toolbar, leaving toolbar. Entering let's build a form web content. Name required. Edit text. Main.
Wait for it.
Give your first and last name.
Right.
Email required. Edit text.
Checkbox.
I agree with the privacy policy. Required unticked. Tick box.
And that doesn't work.
Voice over off.
Let's see what's wrong. Terms error. Description terms. I forgot. Welcome in the world of code editing. Screen reader again.
Voice over on Safari. Let's build a form window. Toolbar.
That's why testing is so important.
Leaving toolbar. Entering let's build a form web content. Name required. Edit text. Main. Email required. Edit text. I agree with the privacy policy. Required unticked. Tick box.
It's description terms. That's why it's so important to test.
Voice over on Safari. Let's build a form window. Leaving toolbar. Entering let's build a form web content. Name required. Edit text. Main. Give your first and last name. Email required. Edit text. I agree with the privacy policy. Required unticked. Tick box. Read our privacy policy. Visited link. Read our privacy policy. Subscribe button.
Let's see if the error messages are announced together with the input field.
Name required. Edit text. Your name is missing. Give your first and last name. Email required. Edit text. Your email address is missing. I agree with the privacy policy. Required unticked. Tick box. Please agree to the terms. Read our privacy policy. Visited link. Read our privacy policy.
So now everything is announced in a logical order. What do we do about the error messages? Let's dive in the code. Let's try aria-live. I'll put an aria-live on the notification. Live is, let's make it polite. For aria-live, the element must already be in the DOM, in the generated code. Because putting aria-live on an element makes the screen reader listen to changes inside that element. If the element is new to the DOM, then the screen reader cannot listen to it. So it needs to be present before you add an aria-live on it. You have aria-live is polite, then the screen reader waits until all interaction is done, and aria-live is assertive, then it announces right away.
Voice over on Safari. Let's build a form window. Toolbar. Leaving toolbar. And email required. I agree with the privacy. Visited link. Subscribe button.
Let's go.
There are errors in your form. Bullet. Please enter your name. Bullet. Please enter your email address. Bullet. Please agree to the terms.
Okay. And if I tap now,
visited link. Back to index. Contained information.
There is a disadvantage on that aria-live. It reads everything inside. If you have like 20 errors, that's a lot to listen to, and maybe someone forgets it. And we also have to fix the focus error. The focus must be on the announcement, and people can tap through the links and go to the form and fix them. So
Ryan, I think the video stopped. Can you check the video, please? Hi, everyone. We get a little technical issue with the presentation. We're working on get Rian video again. Please, if you have any question, use the YouTube chat, and we will be asking the questions at the end of the talk. Thanks for the question, Ahmed. I mean, it has been awesome. I really love the first talk about well, Ahmed on the chat asked about my experience. I think Rian is back. So
okay, shall I? Where did it go wrong? From where? Do you remember?
I mean, it's our first online event, so it always something happened. Can you play the video again at the point that you?
Yeah, and the point was when it stopped. Shall I start with adding the
I think it was
aria-live?
minute 25, 27.
25? Okay. I'll run it from here. I'll share my screen. Sorry about this.
Go ahead, no problem.
I'll put an aria-live on the notification.
Can you please share your screen?
Live is, let's make it polite. For aria-live, the element must already be in the DOM, in the generated code. Because putting aria-live on an element makes the screen reader listen to changes inside that element. If the element is new to the DOM, then the screen reader cannot listen to it. So it needs to be present before you add an aria-live on it. You have aria-live is polite, then the screen reader waits until all interaction is done, and aria-live is assertive, then it announces right away.
Voice over on Safari. Let's build a form. Window. Toolbar. Leaving toolbar. And email required. I agree with the privacy. Visited link. Subscribe.
Right.
Button.
Let's go.
There are errors in your form. Bullet. Please enter your name. Bullet. Please enter your email address. Bullet. Please agree to the terms.
Okay. And if I tap now,
Visited link. Back to index. Content
below the
information.
form. There is a disadvantage on that aria-live. It reads everything inside. If you have like 20 errors, that's a lot to listen to, and maybe someone forgets it. And we also have to fix the focus error. The focus must be on the announcement. Then people can tap through the links and go to the form and fix them. So 2 things we need to address. So first we address the focus issue. I use jQuery because I'm lazy. But any framework, any JavaScript will do. It's up to your own preference. I have a document get-element-by notifications focus, but in Safari that doesn't work. You need to add something extra to your HTML5. And it is focus by giving it depth index of -1. We'll remove the aria-live because that was too much to announce. But what do you do then with the notification? There are colors. And because you move the focus, people can read from there. Well, with aria-live, news is alert. That will be announced. So we move the focus and we on the H3, we thank you for your subscribing, or there are errors in your form. We add a rollers alert. Let's see what happens.
Voice over on Safari. Let's build a form. Window. Toolbar.
I'll run through the form.
Leaving toolbar. Email required. I agree with the visited. Subscribe. Button. There are errors in your form.
Now the screen reader gives a ping, there's an alert, and there are errors in your form. And if I can start tabbing.
Visited link. Please enter your name. List 3 items.
Because this is an unordered list, it announces how many items there are in the list. So you immediately also know how many errors there are. Please enter your name. If I enter that.
Name required. Edit text. Main.
It jumps to the first field. Name. Edit.
Your name is missing. Give your first and last name.
Okay, I'll do that.
Name required. Edit text. R-I-A-N. Ran.
Yeah, sorry. It's Rian.
Your name is missing. Give your first and last name.
Okay.
Email required. Edit text. Your email at HUP.NL. HUP.NL.
Okay.
I agree with the privacy policy. Required unticked. Tick box. I agree with the privacy policy. Tick box.
Okay.
Visited link. Read our privacy policy. Subscribe button.
Okay, what happens now?
Thank you for subscribing.
Now the screen reader gets, the user gets feedback. This can do with some styling, I know, but this is the principle, how it works. In WordPress, we have a very elegant way to add aria-live to your code. They are not depending on elements being in the DOM or not. It's a JavaScript method called wp.a11y.speak, and it's included into WordPress core. There is documentation on how to do it on the accessibility handbook of WordPress. That's on make.wordpress.org/accessibility/handbook. And there with the development best practices, there's a chapter about WP-speak. Let's look at another kind of dynamic change in a form. This is a very simplified form for ordering a t-shirt. Now on sale, get one for only 10 euros. You can select the size and an amount. The total price is calculated and there's a submit button with order. Right, how does that sound?
Voice over on Safari. Let's calculate. Window. Toolbar.
Okay, I'll jump to the size.
Lessons test top. Medium. Size. Pop-up button. Main.
Okay. Select a large.
3 items. Tick. Medium. Closing menu. Large. Size, pop-up button.
Okay, I'll select an amount.
1, amount, pop-up button. Menu 3 at 2. Closing menu. 3, amount, pop-up button.
Right. And then, if you can see, you see total price is 30 euros.
Order, button.
How can you solve this for a screen reader? There are several ways. Let me talk you through them. Okay. In this case, the total price is added into a paragraph. So what we can do is add aria-live. Then, if it changes, it will be announced. Aria-live is, let's choose polite. What happens?
Voice over on Safari. Let's calculate. Window, toolbar.
Okay, I'll jump quickly to amount.
Leaving toolbar. Entering 1, amount.
Okay.
Pop-up button.
I'll select 2.
Menu 3 items. Tick 1, 2. Closing menu. 2, amount. Pop-up button. 20.
It announces 20. Why is that?
Voice over off.
If you look at aria-live is polite, it's listening in this container, total price euro and the span with the amount. And it only announces the changes within. And the only thing that changes is the number. So we have to tell to announce everything inside the container. And that's with aria-atomic is true. Then everything is announced. Let's see what happens.
Voice over on Safari. Let's calculate. Window, leaving toolbar. And 1, amount.
Okay,
Pop-up button.
I'll change the amount.
Menu 3 at 2, 3. Closing menu. 3, amount. Pop-up button. Total price, euros, 30.
Okay, this makes sense. So everything is announced, but it's not really attached to anything in the form. So if someone changes things and goes over the form, the information is not repeated, only on when the change happens. Now we saw several ways to solve this. You can add an aria-describedby to the amount, pointing to the total price. So if someone focuses the amount, also the total price is announced. Think about this. What will be the best way for your use case? Is it the best way to add it to your order button with an aria-label? Personally, I think in this case, you don't need aria at all. What about making it a read-only field, solving it with HTML? We have a label for total with the total price. And then you have an input field. The ID is total, and that's read-only, and has an initial value of 10. Right. In your use case or form, this may be far more complex, but I just want to show you the basics, so you can think about if this way may be better for you. How does this work? There's a field added, total price, and initial value of 10. Let's listen to the screen reader.
Voice over on Safari. Let's calculate. Window, toolbar.
Okay.
Leaving toolbar. Entering let's calculate web content. Medium. Size. Pop-up button. Main. 1, amount. Pop-up button. Menu 3 at 2. Closing menu. 2, amount. Pop-up button. 20. Content selected. Total price. Text. Order. Button.
So now the price is always announced, even if it's the initial price in a normal HTML5 form field. Think about this. I hope these demos were useful for you to get a better idea how Aria works and how you can use it and test for it. Please try this at home. And now I'd like to answer a question I get a lot from developers and designers. Can I use select to? The short answer is no. And I will explain to you why. This is the demo page of select to. It's on select2.org /getting-started/basic-usage. Here you have first a normal select, and after that what you can turn it into. Now this normal select doesn't have a label. I will tell you this because we're going to read through this with the screen reader. So this should have a label like select a state, but it doesn't. Okay. And then there's an example code, an example where you, with a search box, and you can select a state with your mouse if you want to. And if you search for new, you get all the states with the word. I will start with the screen reader.
VoiceOver on Safari. Basic usage vertical line select to the jQuery replacement for select boxes window toolbar.
Okay. I will tap to the first select box.
Leaving toolbar. Link. Getting started. Link. Anchor link for single select boxes.
Okay, here it goes.
Alaska. Pop-up button.
Okay, it's a pop-up button. It's called Alaska. There's no label, whatever. If I use the arrow key, I can go through the options.
Menu 55 items tick. Alaska. Hawaii. Pacific time zone blend. California. Nevada. Oregon. Washington. Arizona.
Sometimes
Night and time zone blend.
Sometimes Safari a bit of hesitates.
Arizona. Idaho.
Okay. If Safari would work properly, then everything is announced, also the dimmed section headings. This is regular HTML5. Okay, I'll select Idaho.
Closing menu. Idaho. Pop-up button.
Now I go to the example.
Alaska. Alaska. Menu pop-up combo box.
Okay. Normally, I open this with the arrow down.
Less than select class equals J's example basic single.
No, that doesn't work. It jumps out of it. So I move up again.
Idaho. Pop-up. Alaska. Alaska. Menu pop-up combo box.
I press enter.
Search text field. Blank.
Okay, the search text field without a label. Okay, I will want to see if I can look New up.
N-E-W. New.
It gives no feedback on what's happening below. So if I want to select something, maybe I'll arrow down and I can select it. I can select it, but I hear nothing. And I have no idea to get out of this, then to select something. Okay, return.
New Mexico. New Mexico. Menu pop-up combo box.
Okay. So this doesn't work well. You get not the proper feedback for a screen reader about what you search for, how to select it, what the select options are. I hope you get the point. If you create something like this, you have to test it with all kinds of different devices. User test. Because select to doesn't work for everyone. And you want people to contact you, order with you, subscribe to your newsletter. Make that as easy as possible. Make that as predictable as possible. I want to quote Hayden Pickering. People don't want to be delighted. They want to do what they came for and then get on with their lives. That doesn't mean that your form needs to be ugly. It can be pretty and also usable for as many people as possible. And that's the extra challenge. Discuss this with your designer. I will end my ranting here. If you want to learn more about how to create and code accessible web projects, I'd highly recommend you taking a course at the Ali Collective at a11y-collective.com. My colleagues and I created courses for everyone involved in a web project. Business owners, stakeholders, project managers, content managers, designers, and of course, developers. The course about accessible code will launch very soon. But to start, there's also a basic course where you can get a broad overview of what accessibility actually is. If you're not sure, take the free tryout course to get an impression of what the courses are like. I hope you got an idea on how ARIA can make a form understandable and give proper feedback. If you depend on a plugin for your forms, check if the plugin uses ARIA to describe and give feedback. If labels are properly connected to the form controls. Now you know where to look out for. Research this before you implement a plugin on your production website. You want everyone to be able to understand your form, of course. Well, I hope I gave you a lot of homework. And I hope you got a better understanding on how people use the web and your forms in a different way. Thank you for listening. Please be safe.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rian, for the talk.
Sorry for taking so much time. I'm really
No, it's
so
okay.
sorry.
But don't worry about it. I mean, thank you very much. We don't have time for questions, but
No, it's okay.
everybody, the questions are going to be on the website, and you can answer the questions over there. Thank you very much for your time. And I mean, that's the last talk that I will be hosting. The next hosting will be Ahmed. Don't forget to attend the next talk. Your CMS is an accessible assistance by...
Yeah, I really would recommend your next talk. That will be an awesome talk. Yeah.
Okay. It will be 8 UTC time. And thank you very much. Have a good day. See you in a bit. Bye.
Bye-bye.